Welcome to another edition of the Macro Updates. This one for August 31st, 2023. Last week, the Federal Reserve held its annual get-together out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Now, at the Jackson Hole meetings, the speech of the Federal Reserve chair is watched very, very closely for any type of indication of changes in monetary policy and where Fed policy might be headed. Well, a lot of people said that there's really nothing new in Powell's speech this year. And in part that's true, but that's also a little bit worrisome. Because let's take a look at some of the things that he did say that he's repeated over and over again. One of the things he said is that he's going to be watching the current data, and if real GDP continues to increase, well, then he may have to continue to tighten or raise interest rates. Well, the problem with this, as Jeremy Siegel at the Wharton Schools pointed out, is to say, well, the reason why real GDP is probably increasing is because there's been increase in productivity. If there's increase in productivity of resources, that's not inflationary, right? Think about it in terms of aggregate supply, aggregate demand. If there are increases in productivity, that shifts the aggregate supply curve out, and therefore that is moderating in terms of inflation. But Powell seems to be obsessed with his idea that if real GDP increases, well, that means that there's overheating and he needs to continue to raise interest rates. But if it's being driven by increases in productivity, that may be the wrong policy at the wrong time. A second thing that's a little bit worrisome about Powell's speech, again, something he's repeated again and again and again, is his take on labor markets. He argues that, well, if labor markets are tight, right, unemployment rate is relatively low, well, that's going to lead to higher wages and that'll lead to inflation. Well, no, not necessarily, right? Remember, the first lesson of economics is everything is relative. When you look at the changes in wages when adjusted for inflation, they're actually falling. Right, what's happening is, yes, wages are increasing, but the various rates of inflation are increasing even faster. So therefore, wages in real terms are actually declining. So therefore, labor markets are really not the source of the inflationary pressures. But if that's what Powell is watching, again, he may see that the unemployment rate falls or even remains steady, but he's going to take that as a sign to continue to contract and raise interest rates. It may wind up leading to the very wrong policy at the wrong time. Another thing that Powell at least mentioned is that there are lags in monetary policy, that actions undertaken by any central bank today are not going to be really felt in the economy until several months into the future. So what's happening right now is we're still feeling the effects of previous Fed tightening. Therefore, further tightening just based on current data may lead again to the wrong policy at the wrong time. So while Powell really didn't say anything new, he has repeated things that in many ways raises serious questions about Fed policy. Do they really understand how the macroeconomy works? We shall see. Until next time. This is Mike Brandl, the Macroeconomic Updates. Take care, everybody.